just gotta make sure you're okay, all right?
Man,
Who's
why
this
you gotta
guy?
be all up in my business?
What's her name?
I don't know.
Remember what I told you.
Remember your name and remember your age just like I told you.
Don't mess this up. Hey, hello. I'm the guy that just called.
Why are you holding all the girls' IDs?
So they don't lose it?
I'm just here for a massage.
It's for us. And you know that I love you, right?
There's a lot of misunderstanding about what human trafficking is.
It's a modern-day form of slavery. It involves both commercial sex acts, so sex trafficking, as well as labor trafficking.
I think for a long time we've just seen these young girls and young boys as teenage prostitutes and not victims of sexual exploitation.
What we know now is that if you come into contact with somebody suspected of prostitution, whether she's a juvenile or she's an adult, chances are that she's been exploited from the time she was a juvenile.
But the reality is that the vast majority of adults that are being prostituted also have someone that's pimping them.
It's incumbent upon law enforcement to look at this as a victim crime. It is no longer a victimless crime.
Patrol can make a difference. And the reason is they're the eyes on the streets. They're the people that are going to intervene initially. They're going to be the ones that find the problem.
Every single contact with that victim is very crucial.
One, because they're victims that are completely vulnerable, completely desperate, and they're in great need of the protection and help of law enforcement.
So law enforcement is really their only chance of being rescued, and so we have to dedicate ourselves to that mission.
We need law enforcement to be highly engaged in this issue, because without the support of law enforcement in the fight against human trafficking, there is no way that we can end this crime.
In the past, many have thought of prostitution as a victimless crime, but today we understand that's not the case. In November of 2012, California voters overwhelmingly approved Proposition 35, known as the Californians Against Sexual Exploitation, or CASE Act. I'm Mark Bailey, and I'll be your host. A goal for this training is to help peace officers recognize the indicators of trafficking and know what actions to take. Another goal of Proposition 35 is to recognize trafficked individuals as victims and not criminals, and to protect the rights of trafficked victims. Human trafficking is one of the fastest growing criminal enterprises in the world today, and it's also taking place right here in our own communities. Surprisingly, over 70% of trafficked persons in California are from our country. Many of these victims are young girls between the ages of 12 and 14 who are sold into modern-day slavery. Proposition 35 made critical enhancements to our state laws to combat trafficking and exploitation. First, longer prison terms for human traffickers. Second, it requires convicted human traffickers to register as sex offenders. It increases fines from convicted human traffickers and uses these funds to pay for victims' services. Prop 35 adds background protection for victims in court proceedings. It removes the need to prove force to prosecute child sex traffickers. And Prop 35 mandates human trafficking training for law enforcement. The main segments in this training include: what is human trafficking? Identification and indicators. Victimology. First contact. Preliminary investigation. And peace officer resources. Human trafficking, or modern-day slavery, is both a state and federal crime. It's a global phenomenon that involves recruiting, harboring, transporting, or obtaining a person through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of commercial sex or forced labor. Victims may be male or female, adults or minors, U.S. citizens or foreign nationals. The crossing of state or national borders is not required for the crime to be considered human trafficking.
I was a child who was born into a drug-addicted home. I was never daddy's little princess or mommy's little girl. I had to grow up really fast. I was molested by my uncle and by some men. My dad was part of the Hells Angels group. I remember my mom getting beat almost every day. And when I would try to help her, or I would tell my school, or I would run outside screaming, then my dad would turn the beatings on me. At the age of 14, I was taken away from my mom due to drugs. I didn't get the opportunity to go to a foster home. They put me in a group home. I just wanted someone to love me. I wanted friends. And this girl befriended me. She was a year older than me. For a year, we were friends, and I told her all my wants, all my dreams, all my desires. And then she introduced me to a better way of living. I could have my nails done, I could have my hair done, I get nice clothes. So I said, okay. I left with her, and that's where the life of trafficking for me at the age of 15 began. I was expecting this child's dream of living, I guess, you know, having nice clothes, your hair done, your shoes, whatever kind you wanted. Even smoking and drinking whenever you wanted to, not having to go to school. Like, I was 15. That sounded exciting to me, right? But she didn't tell me that in the life you're raped, and you're beat, and you're broken, and you can't eat sometimes, and you have to walk in scary places late at night, cold. You know, the first 2 weeks, it was great. Everything she told me happened. And then he came to me and said, you know, you've been here 2 weeks. You've been staying in a hotel. I've gotten you a lot of nice things. It's not free. And I remember telling me that I was going to have sex for money. And I was scared. I didn't even know what to do or how to do it. My life didn't seem to be so bad until I did that. Like, the beats, the hits, everything I was used to. Sleeping with someone for money totally broke me. No little girl grows up wanting to be a prostitute. No little girl grows up wanting to be raped and beat and brainwashed and broken, tore down. Took 6 months to totally demolish my self-worth and my self-esteem. I only felt good enough to a pimp. I only felt pretty enough by having men pay for me. Finding someone who's gonna love me, or getting a job, or going to school, or beautiful, like, that wasn't me. And they instill that in you. What are you gonna do, go to school? You went to 9th grade. What are you gonna do now? Like, you have no college degree, you can't, what are you gonna do, be a waitress? You have a daughter now. Like, you know, they put that in you. Like, only a trick will take care of you, only a pimp will love you, and you believe that. He would never hit me in front of my daughter. And I thought, okay, well, you know, as long as he doesn't hit me in front of her, then it's okay. Like, sometimes I deserved it, right? Like, that's what I thought. Sometimes I deserved to be hit if I just would listen. I could tell he wanted to hit me, so I picked up my daughter, and I thought, if I have her in my arms, he's not going to hit me. He just started hitting me as if I was a man. And I remember her screaming. And the other girls were screaming, like, stop, Daniel, stop. The baby's right there, the baby's right there. And that was it for me. And I just ran. I couldn't think of 911. I put my daughter down, and when you look down, you can see the floor, right? I couldn't even see the ground because my face was so big. At first, I didn't want to press charges. And my mom said, we want to press charges, and the police said she has to say it. So I said, okay, I want to press charges. And the police officers looked at me and my mom and said, why? She's just going to go back. Girls like her go back. And if I can tell you that I just been beat up and broken, and to hear that, like I was nothing. Like, they validated everything that was told to me in those 10 years, that I was nothing, that I wasn't worth saving.
saving.
So what were your impressions of her story?
Tragic.
Tragic? Yeah, exactly. Was she in this voluntarily? Is she a victim? Now, would you know this about her, just encountering her on the street, on a corner? No. How many of you had any kind of a contact with someone that was a victim of human trafficking?
You know, after watching this video, I may have and just missed it.
Yeah, you may have. What is human trafficking? Do y'all know?
Well, I thought it was something that, international girls get smuggled here in our states and are forced either for labor or prostitution. I never realized it would be here in our own backyard.
Yeah, and international trafficking is one form of trafficking, but it is happening here domestically, happening within the United States, within your areas. How many of you have hotels in your areas? Motels? Yeah, if you have a hotel or a motel, you probably have human trafficking going on somewhere in your areas. Why is it important for you to know that it's out there?
Oh, there could be other victims, and it brings in other crime, the narcotics, the theft, all sorts of stuff.
Exactly.
Sarge, when I see prostitutes on the street, I used to think of it as a victim's crime.
So what could you do in her situation? What would you, how would you have handled that after she came to you and she was beaten and she had a child? How might you have handled that?
Probably use the mindset of a domestic violence survivor. That rapport building, getting those resources, removing them from that scene, I guess.
Okay. Now taking the aspect of looking at it as a human trafficking possibility, what do you think your options would be then?
Same thing, lots of resources, remove them from that scene, get them to a safe place.
Right. What are your concerns with her?
Safety.
Whose safety?
Hers, her child.
Yeah, especially the child. And she had a very young child. Okay? And she was in a very violent situation. And she told you she was holding the child when this man was beating her. So the child is probably going to have some trauma as well as your victim. Okay? So you have an opportunity here to do what with her?
Help her.
To help her.
Save her.
Try and pull her out of that whole lifestyle.
Exactly. And how can you do that?
Resources.
What's out there? Do you know what resources are available?
I've been seeing this human trafficking billboards everywhere.
That's the human trafficking hotline. Okay, so they'll provide resources for her, for the child. They'll get her the help she needs. They will help her through the trial and prosecution. There's all kinds of resources at your disposal at that point. So that's always a good place to start. The important thing is to know what the department's protocol is. If we have local resources that are available first, we use those first. Okay, but the important thing here is to change your mindset about what you're seeing out there and what the possibilities are out there.
So if we see a girl that we know that's been prostituting for a while, do we immediately just treat them as a victim? We don't take them in as a suspect, as a prostitute?
Well, what do you think? How would you find out whether or not they've been trafficked?
Well, you have to interview them and brief them.
Yeah, talk to them. Okay. Don't be afraid to just go up and talk to them. I mean, even if they don't look like they might be a victim, and they may have decided that this is really the only available life for them because their pimps told them you can't hold a job, nobody else is going to want you, I'm the only one that loves you, this is all you have, they may have already bought into that life. And it's up to you to change that.
Yeah. A lot of the girls that we run into don't want any help, and they don't want to be talked to at all, and they're very angry with us even being there. So how do you respond to that to help them out?
Well, if you talk to them and you have that attitude, and a lot of them will, some of them will be angry, and they won't appear to be a victim, and they'll tell you, this is just temporary, or my boyfriend doesn't beat me, or, none of what you think is true. And, deep down inside, they're afraid. And sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes it takes a breaking moment for them. For her, it was getting beaten with her child in her arms. For another girl, it may be something else. It may be, getting beat up by a John, not her pimp. It could be any situation. But you have to take advantage of that. Okay? You've got to look at that as an opportunity to help them. And, like I said, it may not happen right away. They may never give up their trafficker. But that's what you want. You want that positive interaction because you want that prosecution at the end of this. Okay? So it takes a lot of patience sometimes. Especially if they don't want to cooperate, right? But your impression, the impression that you give them, is going to be with them for the rest of their lives. And they may pass it on to another victim who may want to get out, who may talk about wanting to get out. And they'll say, oh, don't bother because, the cops are going to tell you there's nothing else out there. Or that, there's not going to be a prosecution or you're just going to go back to the life. Good. Well, I hope you guys got a lot out of this. So like I said, consider the possibilities when you're out there and be safe, stay alert, and have a good shift.
Thanks, Sarge.
The easy cases are when we find a 14 or 15-year-old victim on the street. That's the easy case for all of us to put on our dad hat or our uncle hat and realize that that person's a victim, that they're not out there on their own free will. But when you come into somebody who you expect is what we used to refer to as a hardened prostitute or somebody who just wants to be out there for the money, but to understand that in the vast majority of cases, even if that person is smiling, even if that person tells you that she's working on her own, chances are that's what she's been brainwashed to say.
Domestic trafficking versus international trafficking, really what we're talking about is people coming from abroad and working here in the international context. Domestic trafficking are our children being brought to the streets after they have run away. Well, there's actually 3 different types of trafficking. There's labor trafficking, there's sex trafficking of adults where there has to be force. But most importantly for children, there's sex trafficking where force is not even an element. There's a distinction that needs to be made between smuggling and trafficking. Smuggling is the bringing in of people against their will. Trafficking is the use of these folks, whether they're from abroad or here, in a sexual context or in a labor context.
Well, worldwide, there's millions of people in slavery. I've heard studies that even there are more people in slavery right now than any time in the history of the world. It's probably the fastest growing criminal enterprise worldwide. It's second just to narcotics. I think there's an estimated $30 billion made annually in human trafficking, and everybody's involved in it. I mean, you're seeing all your drug cartels, your local gangs, your organized crime. They're all involved in this because it makes money. A street pimp, he could easily, without even trying, make several $100,000s a year exploiting girls.
Yeah, the individuals that purchase children for sex, they usually fit into 3 categories. Well, they always fit into 3 categories. You have your pedophile, that's specifically looking for a child that has not yet reached puberty. You have your hebephile, who is specifically looking for a child who's still a child but has been through puberty. And then you have your situational abuser. And with this individual, if the child gets in the car and they're 13, that's fine. And if a woman gets in the car who's 33, that's fine.
The risk factor for these children to get involved in human trafficking, it now is bigger than it ever was before. Social media, exploiters find different ways of attracting them out of it. They're going to prey upon kids in the foster system. They're going to be providing that family environment that they might not have at home.
Human trafficking is a huge moneymaker for the traffickers. And unless we turn off the faucet where the money is coming from, we'll continue to have this issue. And in fact, it's increasing.
There are many additional crimes connected to human trafficking, and there are also many myths associated with human trafficking.
I think one of the greatest myths about human trafficking victims and just prostitutes as a general population is that they're doing it by choice. The second biggest myth is that they make a lot of money. In most cases, when we come in contact with the victim, they're lucky if they have $1 in their pocket. I think another myth, as it relates to human trafficking victims and prostitutes as a general population, is that they're free to come and go. Oftentimes when people think about somebody, being trapped, they think about a foreign victim coming here from another country that's being held, in a basement or that's tied up. But these individuals are not free to come and go. They are oftentimes placed on a track on the street and told, you can walk these 4 blocks and go to this hotel, and that's your mobility. And if they go outside of those parameters, there are very violent consequences. We see the majority of the exploiters are males, but there are also exploiters that are female, and we see the majority of the exploiters may be males that are within 20 to 40 years old, but you can also find an exploiter that's a male who's 60 years old.
People actually might think that people just go out there to sell themselves because they want money and it's all about money. It's not like that. Some people are being forced into it. Some people's parents make them do that. Some people really don't have a choice.
There's several methods that traffickers will use to control their victims and also to seduce and recruit their victims in the beginning. And some of those methods include the Casanova, Romeo, I love you, we're going to have a family and children and a nice home. Many of these victims come from broken homes and broken families, so that's appealing to them. You also have the very violent traffickers who don't try to seduce them, but straight kidnap, rape, drug, beat, and put out to buy and sell. You have your exploiters that are just looking for a girl who has a dream. She wants to be a movie star. She wants to, travel to Hawaii, whatever it is, and they capitalize on that dream and promise them that they can make that dream come true. Yes, these victims not only have violence actually perpetrated upon them, but they are under a constant threat of violence, and it's very unpredictable. So a trafficker will beat a girl for no reason, just so that she will not be able to think about her sustainability, because all she could think about in terms of her long-term sustainability, she's just thinking about surviving that moment.
Once a trafficker is able to recruit a vulnerable victim, oftentimes they're going to isolate them by moving them to a different state or a different county or a different city. And what that does is it decreases the chance that that victim is going to be able to run away. And once that exploiter can induce somebody to commit their first act of prostitution, the self-worth that vulnerable victim had for themselves has gone all the way down. As soon as they turn their first trick, they view themselves as a bitch, a whore, or a prostitute. The trafficker views them as the same, and they've been told that nobody will accept them. Their family won't accept them. Law enforcement won't accept them. He's the only one that's going to accept her for what he's now turned her into, which is a prostitute.
Prop 35, which is also called the Californians Against Sexual Exploitation Act, increases the penalty for human trafficking. It puts more protection in place for victims, and it requires law enforcement training, as well as requiring sex traffickers to register as sex offenders. And it also protects victims through giving them more services. So the fines that are collected will go into victim services as well as law enforcement operations.
And California voters demonstrated that they care about this issue. And I think it was eye-opening for a lot of people. It humanized the issue and helped to diminish some of the social stigma and isolation that a lot of victims in our state and in our country have experienced.
Coming up in the next segment, we will look at the indicators and learn how to identify victims of human trafficking.
It is really tough for cops to break through the brainwashing that the traffickers place on these victims when they interact with them. Oftentimes, the victims seem very angry and sometimes even very hateful towards the cops. But don't be mistaken, that really is the brainwashing tactics of the traffickers. And sometimes it may be the victim's own experience, but a positive interaction with the cop can definitely shift that.
In this segment, we will look at the indicators that can help peace officers recognize victims. In the past, these trafficking victims often seemed more like suspects, but today we know that most of these young men and women have been trafficked. And law enforcement may be their only means of escape.
But baby, you have to do this. Hey, it's for us. Huh? Hey, you know that I love you, right? Right? We're gonna have the future we've been dreaming about.
I love you too, Big Daddy. You know I do. I don't really feel like it tonight.
Oh, come on. Aren't you tired of living in hotels? Trying to figure out when we're gonna eat?
Yeah.
You have to make money tonight. You have to bring home $300. All right? Hey. Do it for us. For our future. Yeah? You know that I care about you, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right then.
So you're taking the whole family to the theme park tomorrow?
Yeah, should be a good time.
Sounds expensive.
Yeah.
You see little mama right there in the short shorts?
Yeah, I see her.
How old do you think she is?
She looks pretty young. I bet she's a minor.
I'm saying, and that's like the third car I've seen her wave to since we've been here.
Yeah, we should go stop her.
Yeah, let's go talk to her. Go ahead and put it out.
46 said I have a Ted stop at 5th and Broadway.
Now what? Okay.
So this is a common prostitution area.
Okay.
Is this something we've had problems with before in that same area? So.
All right. So what are you going to do when you contact her?
And see what her explanation is for her being out there.
Okay.
And of course, she's going to give you a song and dance as to why she's there. She's looking for a friend or, you know, on her way to the store. But you're going to have to get below that layer to see who has either put her out there or, you know, what she's really doing out there.
Okay, so what kinds of questions are you going to ask her at that point then? What signs are you going to look for that maybe she's not out there because she wants to be? What are you going to take into consideration there?
She has any ID on her.
Okay.
She has any cash on her.
Okay. If you find a girl with no money, what are your assumptions then?
She's got a pimp out there somewhere.
Okay, and they're coming in and taking the money after a few tricks, and which means what about them?
That
They're exploiting. What else?
got complete control over
her.
her.
What more importantly than that? And those are good. They're obviously someone's controlling her, but what else?
That she's being forced to be out on the street.
Okay. But she's been out there for a little bit. You're watching her walk up and down. It's late. She may have been out there for a couple of hours. But at this point, when you contact her, she's got no money on her, or very little money on her.
Her exploiter has got to be around too.
He's got to be around somewhere. He may be close by.
He's pulling security. I don't know if he's... I'd look for phones too. I'm a big fan of looking for those phones.
Okay, and what about the phones?
I mean, I guess she can be nonverbal, just looking around, making sure that her pimp's in the area, but some of these children, you know, they have phones. It's like that leash that these pimps are using to keep continuous communication with them.
Okay.
So I tie those things up really fast, grab up those phones, look through them really quick, figure out if that pimp's close by, or wait for that phone call from that pimp.
Okay. And what if the pimp is close by? What kind of a situation is it going to put your victim in?
She's going to lie. She's going to protect him.
Right. And why is she going to do that?
She's afraid for her own safety.
She's afraid because he's close by. He can see her. And if you stand around and are talking to her for any length of time, what's that going to do for her?
Slow the cash flow up. She's not working. It's money time. So.
And he's going to think that she's spilling her guts, that she's telling the police everything about him, where he's at, what he's driving, how long she's been out there. So he's going to obviously be worried about that.
Right.
And obviously that's a safety problem for her. If we can't arrest her, if we can't get her help or do something for her, she's going to go right back to him and he's going to do whatever, beat her up or whatever he's going to do to her.
Yeah, exactly. So she may be a little uncooperative at first. And you mentioned checking her ID. What typically happens when you check their ID?
Usually it's a wrong ID, it's a fake ID.
Exactly.
Or if they have no ID, they give you a wrong name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you approach that? How do you handle that? She's given you a false ID. She's obviously anxious. She's scared. She's trying to get you to leave her alone because she knows the pimp's in the area, and that's a safety issue for you. So how might you handle talking to her?
I think the first thing I would do is remove her from the environment.
Okay.
I would bring her back to the station and debrief her.
Okay.
Maybe she'll feel more comfortable being that has minimum clothes on. Maybe get her something warmer, give her some food, because who knows if she's eaten all day.
Okay.
You know, and just just like how we do with DV victims, we get an advocate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, contact an advocate to be there and maybe talk to her. And then, with the human trafficking number that you provided us earlier, maybe start making some phone calls and see what kind of resources we can provide for her. That way we can establish that rapport and trust.
Okay. And that's important.
I didn't hear anybody mention, let's try to find him. Generally, most of this prostitution's taking place in parking lots, hotels, that sort of thing. Get another officer over there and search the parking lot. We just had an incident the other day where we're contacting one of these girls and the vehicle drives off, we stop the vehicle, and sure enough, that's her pimp. Mm-hmm. So, you need to have teamwork from your fellow officers as well. Search the parking lots, search the hotels, do whatever you can to locate him. And hopefully you can start, fixing this problem we have here.
Exactly.
We talked about it earlier as well. Most of us in law enforcement come at these girls as their suspects. We treat them like suspects. We need to start, as law enforcement as a whole, basically launching a twofold investigation. One on the suspect side, and also treat them as a victim, because that's essentially what they are.
Exactly.
But there also is criminal element going on there as well, so we need to investigate both sides of that. And I think it's just a buy-in we need in law enforcement as a whole.
Don't take every situation as routine, and stay safe out there and be alert.
Thanks, Sarge.
Thanks, Sarge.
That particular scenario was really classic Romeo pimping, in which the girl is being manipulated because she really cares for him and she loves him and he's controlling her with love. And you see how he changes his demeanor when she says she does not want to work. And then when she agrees to it, he's happy again, and then they're back in love.
I think it's a good way to see inside the car what goes on prior to the scripted answers that they normally give law enforcement when they come in contact with them.
Let's get started with domestic sex trafficking, who the players are and how the game works.
When we talk about the purchaser, we're talking about people that we used to call Johns, the people that on the street, they refer to them as tricks, the person who's going to pay for sex acts from a prostitute. When we talk about the victims, we're talking about victims of commercial sexual exploitation, of pimping, pandering, or human trafficking. And the exploiter we're referring to, sort of the most evil in the group, that's the human trafficker or the pimp panderer.
It takes on a very similar look to the gang culture. And so, the trafficker plays like the gang leader, and the individuals that are being victimized in trafficking become like a family. And so the traffickers have the girls calling each other wife-in-laws. They call the trafficker himself daddy. He calls the group of girls that he has his stable. And so there's definitely a different language they use. They use words. The girl that brings in the most money, they call her the bottom bitch.
The trafficker sets up rules for the victims that he exploits to follow. He sets up a daily quota of how much they have to earn by performing sex acts, be it $300 or $500 or even as much as $1,000 a day. He limits their ability to move or travel. He tells them where they can work on the track, tells them what streets to stay in between.
There are many indicators of human trafficking, and most of those are the same when it comes to domestic and international victims. The one difference for international victims is going to be a language barrier.
First and foremost is the control indicator. Who is in the control of situation? Meaning thereby, if does this person have his or her identification documents or travel documents for that matter, or is someone else in possession of those documents?
Some of the things that you can look for in a possible human trafficking victim are tattoos or branding, we call it often. Of course, the way that they are dressed, especially if it is not, it doesn't coincide with the weather outside. Look at their background. Are they former foster care kids, for example, runaways, if there's been other domestic violence situations that they've been involved in, indications of travel, if there's bus tickets, plane tickets, for instance, motel key cards, green dot cards and other credit cards are commonly used to move money between the victim and the exploiter. False IDs are also typically used, especially if the victim is still a minor.
So if somebody is taking some victim from one place to another place, we would like to see who is in control of travel documents. We recently had a case where this lady had all the passports with her, and she claimed that she had all these passports and all these documents for safety reasons.
Oftentimes, international victims will engage in employment opportunities to come to the United States thinking that they're going to be, for instance, a waitress at a bar. When they get to the United States, they wind up being told that they're not going to be a waitress, but they're going to actually be a prostitute.
Was someone's pay garnished to pay off alleged debts? Is someone being forced to engage in commercial sex acts? Or if the person is engaging in commercial sex acts, are they under the age of 18? Is someone being forced to work excessive hours or unusual hours?
So some of the more obvious behavioral indicators that a first responder should pay attention to is a certain level of anxiety. So there may be some apprehension about trusting the individual that they're talking to. They might divert their eyes. So that's one of the more physical responses, I'd say. There's definitely evasiveness. So you might face aggression, and I think that's one of the most significant factors. I think that at least in the past, has kept first responders from really seeing victims as victims.
You get out of the car and you usually talk to someone in a low-key consensual contact, and immediately you're met with an aggressive, combative, angry response from an individual. That is consistent with someone that has been groomed to have that kind of response towards law enforcement.
If you're dealing with a domestic violence situation that involves a foreign national that is not a family member of the people who are alleged to have assaulted the individual, look around, see what the situation is, see what the living conditions are. Oftentimes, there's a misconception about human trafficking victims because the public will see, and even law enforcement will see, that they had freedom of movement. They could move around and go from place to place. They could go to the store, especially in domestic situations. Oftentimes, people think that that means that they weren't trafficked, that they're not a victim, they're not being controlled.
I would encourage police officers to take another look when they're responding to domestic violence calls. We have a lot of training when it comes to domestic violence. I mean, our training starts in the academy. And for the most part, police officers do what we're trained to do really well. But we haven't trained what to look for when it comes to human trafficking. And so I've seen lots of cases come across my desk written as domestic violence, and they're really human trafficking cases.
When looking for indicators, trust your instincts. If something doesn't look right, there's usually a reason. Coming up in the next segment, we will look at how exploiters prey on the most vulnerable members of our society and what peace officers can do to help.
Positive contact with law enforcement for a victim of human trafficking can be the difference between life and death.
In this segment, we will explore victimology. These victims usually look and act more like suspects, and in many of these cases, a call for service may look like domestic violence instead of human trafficking.
Hi, thanks for coming. I'm really worried about the people in 125. I've heard a lot of yelling and screaming and talk about money coming from the room. The past couple of days, some men have been coming and going, and then I heard screaming, and now one man left, but they're still screaming in the room. I'm worried.
Okay, and where's 125?
Right down there past the gray truck.
And how many people are in the room?
I believe just a man and a woman.
Okay, we'll go check it out.
Great, thank you.
Get your hands off me. Keep them down.
Baby,
it's not gonna be fine. Shut up. Talk to me when you're spoken to. That's it. That's it. Hey!
Hey, how's it going?
It's good.
We got a call about a little yelling going on in here. Is everything all right?
Everything's fine.
All right, you mind stepping out here and talking to me real quick? You don't have your weapons on you or anything like that?
No.
All right, you mind turning around? I'm just gonna make sure you don't have your weapons on you. You know those fingers on top of your head? Spread your feet for me. There we go. All right, put your hands down, man. Turn around. What's your name?
Paul.
Paul, what's your last name?
Garcia.
All right, Paul. Hey, is there anybody else in the room?
It's just my girl.
Oh, your girl? Okay. Is it okay if my partner goes in and make sure she's okay?
Go ahead.
All right. Thanks. All right, just stay out here with me. So what's going on today?
Not much, just hanging out.
Okay. It's just you and your girl?
Just me and her.
Okay.
Hey, you okay? Are you injured or hurt or anything like that?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Yo, where did you take him?
He's right outside with my partner.
Okay, can I talk to him?
Not right now. We're investigating a possible crime.
There's
We
no
gotta make
crime
sure-
here. Everything's fine.
Okay. We just gotta make sure you're okay, all right?
Man,
Who's
why
this
you gotta
guy?
be all up in my business?
What's his name?
That's my boyfriend.
What's his name?
Why don't you go ask him what his name is?
All right. What's your name?
Keisha?
Keisha what?
Man, this some kind of bullshit.
Well, we have to do an investigation. We got a call. You guys were being loud, so we're here now. So.
Listen, everything is chill, okay? We're just chilling in here. Everything's fine.
Okay, then just give me your last name.
Washington.
All right. And what's your birthday?
Are you for real?
For reals.
To May 20th,
What year?
1984.
All right.
Hey, Paul, who's this girl to you?
She's my girlfriend.
She's your girlfriend?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you guys arguing or fighting today?
Oh, man. It was just a little misunderstanding.
Uh-huh.
You know? I mean, we were just having a conversation talking about her mom. I didn't hit no one, though. All right?
Okay.
Yeah. You know, she always causes problems with us. You know, I mean, sometimes we get loud, but we love each other, man.
All right.
But it's just her mom. She's always getting in the way.
All right, so we got a records check back on the name and birthday that you gave us, and it's obviously fake, okay? You're not 28 years old. I got all day to sit here and find out the truth, okay? We know that's cash. You got it written on your chest. So what's going on with that? Bet there's like 5 or 6 other girls with that same tattoo, right? Is he your boyfriend, for real?
Oh, he's my boyfriend.
Okay.
We've been together for like 2 months. I ain't got nowhere else to go.
Okay. Well, then what's your real name?
Vicky.
Where are you from?
I'm not from around here.
Okay. Vicky. What's your last name?
Jones.
All right. Dispatch from Charles 48.
I didn't hit her like I said.
Okay, you didn't hit her, she didn't hit you?
No.
Okay.
Does it look like it, man?
You don't have any injuries on you?
No.
All right. Hey, I gotta ask, man. That's just
right.
what we do, okay? She's okay, though?
She's fine.
I just got information about your boyfriend. We know what he's into. He's got a long criminal history.
We love each other. We just want to be together.
They also told me you previously ran away from your foster home. I understand that he might have been the only one there for you, but he's a bad dude.
You're wrong. He loves me. He's the only one that's ever been there for me. I don't even know what I'd be doing without him.
There is help and resources out there for you. There are options. I understand that you have a restraining order against him, and if you stick with this guy, things are likely not to change.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, Paul. I'm gonna go talk to my partner and see what's going on, but I'm gonna have you have a seat in the car. You're not under arrest or anything like that, but we're just gonna have a seat in the car, okay?
All right.
Let's go this way. Yeah, he's saying it's DV, verbal only, so, I mean, it's almost time to go home, so why don't we just... I think we got a lot more than just a DV going on. We have to call a supervisor out here. I think we have a trafficking victim that could use our help. All right. Victim that can use your help. All right.
So what do you think about the 2 officers that handled the situation?
There were a lot of red flags, though. The person who called the police, you know, they met with her, and they talked about husband and wife, a lot of people coming back and forth from the room, and they were arguing about money. So in my mind, there were a lot of red flags that the officer who was talking to the male half should have keyed up on.
Okay, so there were definite indicators that it was more than just a domestic violence situation. Right? And then that's sometimes how some of these situations present, especially in hotels and motels, when they hear, you know, yelling and screaming and arguing and fighting. That's the original assumption. What about the other officer, the officer that was talking to the female? What about his attitude? What did you see that he did?
I think he was open to, he did his due diligence in getting some criminal history on the male half, putting the whole tattoo and his name thing together, and, you know, what the RP had said earlier. I think he's putting all that together in his head and coming up with what he thought was going on, which sounded like it was the right call.
Right. How long did it take him to get that information?
Just a few minutes.
Right, and in the real world, that may take a lot longer. So what did he exhibit with her in getting her to give him all the information that he needed that actually changed his mind about what was really going on?
I thought he was persistent.
He was persistent.
He kept at it, and he at one point there, you can even see he even changed his attitude. He was very patient with her and kind of backed off, even though she was trying to show some signs that she wasn't going to be cooperative with him. Mm-hmm. He kind of backed off and came at her from a different angle.
Right.
But he was definitely persistent and worked at it. Mm-hmm. He just didn't let it go. I mean, he could have probably just got the minimal information, just like his partner did, and walked out of the room.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to be forthcoming in the beginning, so you have to continue to show compassion and kind of fill in that void they have or what they are expecting from their exploiters. You know, just learning from this video, she has no place to go. So automatically start thinking, okay, where can we put her? Shelter. What resources are available for her?
Right. Look for the indicators and maybe start using those indicators to get her to talk more. You know, what did the officer say to her at one point when he knew she wasn't giving him the right name? What did he do at that point?
And he said, we know what this guy's known for. We know what he's up to.
Exactly.
How many girls have that tattooed, the same tattoo on their chest? Kind of brought her to a place where a little bit of doubt in her head that maybe that she's not his main squeeze, that she's not the main girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. What did he find out about her? When he finally got her real name, what did he find out about her?
She has a restraining order against him.
What is your immediate thought? I mean, what do you arrest him for? What do you charge him with in this situation?
For the violation at minimum. Violation of the restraining order. You'd have to check in what the parameters are of the restraining order, but certainly it's probably not going to be a peaceful contact.
Right.
And
so
then you could arrest him
the
for
restraining
that.
order helps, right?
Correct.
Okay. And what else at this point?
Well, as you're already building up the case, you already know that she's probably being forced for prostitution. So at least at minimum, I'm pimping.
Okay. All right. Even if she's not being forced, you still have a pimping charge. He's got her in his possession.
And you probably have him for some kind of domestic charge as well, because he offers up, oh, I didn't hit her or anything. And usually that's...
Right, but do you want to charge him with a domestic violence charge?
If you don't really have much else, if you can't really go to that next step, you may want to at least look at that.
When you charge someone with a domestic violence charge, you're assuming that there is some type of cohabitation and relationship involved there. So one of the first things you want to find out is what that relationship really is. Because if you charge him with domestic violence, you may negate the ability to charge him with some type of human trafficking if that ends up being the situation somewhere down the road. Okay? Especially if she's not real cooperative and you're not getting all the information out. So you really want to be careful with what you choose to charge him with in that situation. So what can you do at this point? What are your opportunities here?
Well, you got to look at what's missing in her life and fill that void that supposedly this pimp is. So looking at she doesn't have a place to stay is to start looking at, well, what kind of resources are available that would provide her with shelter.
Right.
I think the officer that was inside the motel room with her did an awesome job building rapport, getting her to, I guess breaking the ice with her.
Okay.
But calling out an advocate, finding a social worker that can talk in her terms and is not wearing a uniform.
So the important thing here, again, is to know the resources that are available for her that you can offer to her to let her know that she's safe, have the patience to keep asking her questions, wait her out, and don't necessarily arrest the male for domestic violence charges because it may not be that. Okay, so remember, some of these situations may be deceiving. They're going to present as something they may not be. So dig deeper, look around, look for more evidence, look for more indicators that it may be something more than it really is. All right? All right, so be safe, stay alert out there, and have a great shift.
Thanks, Sarge.
One of the things that's really important to understand about many human trafficking victims is that they oftentimes perceive themselves as domestic violence victims, because the traffickers have coerced them and manipulated them and tricked them essentially into believing that they are in a relationship. And because many of them come from previous experience of abuse and neglect, they have no sense of what a healthy relationship is. So they accept the relationship with the trafficker.
There are many risk factors that exploiters use to prey on the most vulnerable members of society.
The kids that are most susceptible to this kind of being pulled into this lifestyle are these kids that are looking for a family structure. We're seeing a high percentage of our children that are in foster care or runaways get caught up in the lifestyle, in the game. They're getting caught up in the idea of being promised a family structure.
Foster care youth represent less than 1% of our minor population, but they represent 60% of children who are trafficked in the United States. 60%.
For adults, what we find is that they too were victimized at a very early age. They were brought into this life, if you will, at age 14.
When you've been a victim all your life, that's normal. Being a victim is normal. You don't know anything else.
One of the groups that we don't hear much about are boys. And so boys are also at a risk. And even more specifically, boys who identify as gay or transgender are at an increased risk. And any child that identifies in that category of LGBTQ would be at an increased risk for recruitment into the commercial sex industry.
There's really two basic types of recruitment when you're talking about getting brand new, fresh girls into trafficking. And there's, what we call guerrilla pimping, and there's what we call Romeo pimping. And a lot of times the guerrilla pimping gets the most attention because it is so violent, it's so abrasive, it's so sudden. A pimp pulls up to a corner and just snatches a girl from a bus stop and puts her in the trunk and drives off with her and then forces her into prostitution. The large majority of girls are completely romanced and groomed into it.
There are many pathways to entry for children who are commercially sexually exploited. Some of those include drug-addicted parents who sell these children as early as 4 or 5 years old in order to meet their drug habit. You have children that respond to ads that they think they're going to be a model or a dancer or an actress. One of the methods that we also see quite frequently is children recruiting other children at the direction of the traffickers. And so peer recruitment is what we call that.
My daughter was 16. And she had a friend who was actually 3 years younger than herself. They went to school together. And so the young lady asked my daughter, hey, you want to go to a party? And my daughter agreed. It was the summer. She asked permission. She's 16. I'm like, okay, where is it? So she goes to this party, supposedly leaves to go to a party, but gets picked up by the 13-year-old and a trafficker who's an adult and taken to a motel room and told what she'd be doing, given rules, and was put out on the street. And so that's another method of recruitment, which is befriending.
This is a shocking story. Befriending other teenagers into prostitution. Exploiters do both physical and psychological damage to their victims.
So the implications of being involved in this life aren't just mental, they're also physical. Things that at 14 are difficult to deal with emotionally. And psychologically, then, we see people acting out physically as well. We see cutting. We see efforts to deface oneself, to make one less attractive, whether it's the cutting of the hair to make one look less attractive, or just physically being unkind to oneself, if you will.
I mean, the impact that human trafficking victims suffer includes a spiritual impact, where they have a loss of faith in humanity and spirituality. There's also the psychological impact. And some people don't think about the social impact. These victims are often isolated from mainstream society.
I often see evidence of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, within these victims.
Stockholm Syndrome is especially important for law enforcement to know about, because with Stockholm Syndrome, the children align themselves with the exploiter, and they see those trying to rescue them, including law enforcement, including advocates such as myself, as the enemy.
Unfortunately, human trafficking victims don't present as victims. And so because I know I certainly didn't, I was all of the above. I was evasive, I was anxious, I was fearful, I was angry.
You need to really take the time to get to know their situation, and for them to be comfortable coming forward to you could take a lot of time, even if you're providing resources to them.
I am a 12-year survivor of sex trafficking. I was exploited from 14 to 18, and in 4 years, I did not have one encounter with law enforcement that could have led to my escape from my exploiter. I didn't have any encounters with law enforcement that invoked that sense of safety and empathy and warmth. In the advocacy world, we spend a lot of time talking about what still needs to change, but I'm one to look at where we've come, and we've really come a very long way. I think even the process of the development of this training has really opened my eyes and made me see, how far we've come as a community, and especially as law enforcement. I'm proud of law enforcement. I want to personally thank all of the law enforcement officers in our state for the work that they're doing and for their investment in protecting this population. I feel like I want to pinch myself sometimes because I have the historical perspective of what it was like and where we are now.
Exploiters use many methods for recruitment. Some have recruited from college campuses. Victims have signed modeling contracts, only to find themselves forced into prostitution and held there with threats against family members. Coming up in our next training segment, we will focus on first contact and how the first few minutes can make a real difference.
Throughout my experience in talking to victims of human trafficking, the commonality that I've seen is that no one wakes up and wants to be a prostitute or wants to be a victim of human trafficking.
In this section, we will look at first contact. The key is for peace officers to help victims self-identify as victims, build rapport, and help them learn to trust law enforcement. The first 5 minutes are the most important and can set the stage. It may be the moment that changes their lives.
Hey, look at that.
Let's go check it out.
How you doing this evening?
Hi.
Why are you parked back here?
We're just chatting. I was giving her a ride.
What's your name?
My name is David Wilson.
What's her name?
I don't know.
Mr. Wilson, why don't you step out of the car? Let's talk. Let's walk back towards my car. Mr. Wilson, where were you going tonight?
Where was I going? I was just going home, but I was giving her a ride. She's going someplace nearby.
Where were you taking her to?
She's at a friend's house, not far from here.
How did you meet her?
I was getting gas at the gas station, the Shell, not far from here, right up the street. And she walked up and asked if she could have a ride. So I said, sure. I mean, she looked like she could use some help, so I said, why not?
What kind of help did she ask for?
Just a ride.
How do you know this guy?
I met him earlier today. I was at the movies and he offered me a ride.
Where were you guys headed to?
He was taking me home.
Where's home to?
Just to a friend's house.
What's your friend's name?
I don't know.
And you met her at the gas station?
Yeah, I was getting gas at the Shell station, not far from here, right up the road. And she just walked up and asked if she could have a ride.
Renee, I've been doing this job for a long time. I've been working this area for a few years, and I've met a lot of girls that have been in the same situation. I'm not here to trip you up, I'm not here to get you in trouble, and I'm not here to take you to jail. What I'm here to do is make sure that you're safe and that no one's trying to hurt you or make you do things that you don't want to do. Okay? I can tell that you're not being honest with me about a lot of things right now, and I understand that there's a lot of trust issues with cops you probably had in the past. But right now I'm here to help you. And in order for me to do that, you have to be honest with me, because I'm going to be honest with you. Okay? How old are you really?
16.
You're 16? Okay.
Do you have any ID on you?
It's in my jacket, in the car. Do you want me to get it?
No. Why don't you stay here? Just relax. We'll finish talking. Stay right there. Chris? He told me that he picked her up at the Shell station. She asked for help, needed a ride to a friend's house. He's pretty nervous. He gave me some bogus story about coming back here to use a cell phone.
Okay. She's actually only 16 years old and said that he picked her up at the movie theater and they were going to have a car date back here behind the building. She even said she told him she was only 16 years old and he was okay with it.
Okay. Let's arrest him. Mr. Wilson, turn around. I'm placing you under arrest. Turn around, reach back towards me. Reach back towards me. Separate your hands. Let's walk back towards the rear of my car. Stop right here. Go ahead and spread your feet apart. Stop right here. Go ahead and spread your feet apart.
So what did the officer do here to get the victim to talk to her, to figure out that he had a victim?
He made her feel at ease, that he's not there to get her in trouble. His main purpose with her was to help her.
Right. So he's presenting an opportunity for her to do what here?
To help herself, essentially.
Right.
He's saying, hey, my job is not to get you in trouble, my job is to help you. But it's twofold, you need to help yourself. Okay. And you can see she broke down, which means, I mean, he's starting to break down those barriers, right. And she's going to be most likely open to those solutions.
Okay. What was the one thing that he did, though, that helped her feel a little bit safer and a little bit more willing to talk to him and tell him what he wanted to know? What did the officers do?
Well, he told her that, that she's not in any trouble, that, that he was going to look to arrest her, and that he had been doing this for a long time. And so right off front, he let her know that, he knew that she wasn't telling the truth, but, he still showed patience and some compassion there.
Good. What else?
I like the fact that both of the officers separated the individuals.
Yes.
So the driver was with the female officer, and she got to talk to him and debrief and figure out what was going on in his head. And then when the other officer was with the juvenile, he gave her some breathing room, gave her an opportunity to speak without being heard. I think that was healthy. That was good.
Good, good. Does that take her anxiety level down a little bit? All right. So when the other half is gone, when you separate, before you even know what you have, you don't know that you have a suspect and a victim yet at this point, but if you're separating them to get their stories, she's going to be a little more at ease. He can't see her, he can't hear what she's saying, so she might be a little more willing to tell the truth. Now, where does the focus go to at this point? Who is your focus in this situation? Once you find out who she is, that she's underage.
The driver.
Yeah,
right.
He's the focus.
Okay, so at this point, you've got to figure out what his role is in this. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to, with them separated like this and talking to them, how are you going to find out what his angle actually is?
Find out what his story is, and then compare, her story as well, and you'll see that it's not matching.
Good.
And you can just tell by his demeanor, he's nervous. He doesn't even know the girl's name, and just in the area where they're at, in a parked car in a deserted parking lot.
Right. Okay. Is it possible she was forced into that situation? Yeah, that's an important thing to consider, because there may be an exploiter, a trafficker behind her, or it may just be this guy. He may be her exploiter. So at this point, that's now where the digging starts, and you want to start finding out what that backstory is. Did he approach her? Did she ask him for a ride? Which one of those is the truth? Does he have a history of this? You want to start digging in as far as what he may be, because he may be a pedophile, and he may have sought her out on the internet, found her on the street, whatever the situation. So it could be any number of things. So you really want to look at what his story is and figure out what you're going to charge him with. Because at this point, you find out she's a juvenile. What can you charge him with?
Well, she's a juvenile, and if it's about that she was going to exchange sex for money, certainly you can do with the new human trafficking charge, 236.1.
Okay. And what else? What else can you get him for?
And also, if he's an adult and she's a minor, and if they had sex, probably looking at molestation cases.
Right. So you've got child molestation, child abuse. Let's look at how he may have gotten her in this situation, or gotten her into, let's say, his possession.
Well, we could possibly be looking at kidnapping, or
Right. He could have kidnapped her. That's always a possibility, and she may be afraid to tell you that. So that's why it's also important to separate the two, to get those stories out.
I think it's important that, there may be other victims out there. Odds are that he's done this 10 previous times with underage girls, and he just happened to get caught this time.
Right.
So it's very possible there could be other girls that he's done this to, picked up, kidnapped, whatever that may be out there.
And it's possible that your victim may know who some of those girls were, because maybe she's part of a group of girls that this guy exploits. So keep that in mind too. Even if you may not get it from him, you might be able to get it from her. So it's really important to build that trust and to kind of build that bond. Anytime you've got a situation like this, and you find a couple of people in a car like this in a dark area behind the building, it's easy to make assumptions. It's easy to assume that it's some sort of a purchaser of sex that's just picked up a girl on the street and brought her back there. These investigations are time consuming. It takes a lot of patience to get the information you need to find out what you really have. I mean, even if it's at the end of shift and, like in the other situation, you want to take your time. You want to find out what you have. You want to make sure that your victim is going to be safe, it's going to be removed from the situation, and that you have a good background, some good charges that you can file on the exploiter. Okay, and that's the important thing, is to get them away from each other. Okay? Any other questions about this? All right, well, be safe, stay alert out there, and have a great shift.
Thanks, Sarge.
Thank you.
I think, traditionally law enforcement has gone fairly easy on the customers, on the Johns. And we really need to increase our focus on the demand side of this equation.
What we're trying to do now with the new human trafficking laws and the new approach to human trafficking is really change our approach to a victim-centered approach and address the prostitutes as victims of human trafficking and victims of modern-day slavery.
Know your patrol area. Get out of the car and talk to people. Because a lot of times, they're not going to want the help at that point. But that first contact, next time they see you, they're going to trust enough to say, I'm ready.
They might look at it and realize, well, actually, some cops out there are interested, and maybe, depending on the timing, maybe something will be going on in that person's life that day, and they will realize, today's the day, I want to get out of this, I want to put this behind me and move on.
Remember, it's important to be patient with these victims. A good approach might be to treat them like you would treat a victim of domestic violence.
It's our job as law enforcement officers to dig deeper and ask more open-ended questions of the victim and really sit back and listen to their story rather than come into an interview or come into a contact with our own preconceived notions of what the prostitute may have been through or the victim of human trafficking may have been through.
So if you just ask the key questions, simple of, how are you? How'd you get here? Is anybody taking care of you?
The open-ended questions I would suggest are just tell us your story rather than asking yes or no or questions that require a yes or no answer. Ask very vague questions of how did you get here? Where did you come from? Where is your place of residence? How are you paying for your hotel every day? Who is in control of your who's in control of your money? Have you ever been in a relationship before, or have you seen a relationship on TV between a husband and a wife? Does the husband convince the wife to go out and have sex with strangers? And oftentimes that's when it clicks in with our victims that, yeah, you know what, this isn't a normal relationship, or if this person did love me, they wouldn't have me out here doing these horrible things. So one of my investigators actually has come up with a line that all of us have used now in an interview, is that they have to get to a point in an interview where the girl is starting to realize that, yes, she is an actual victim of human trafficking. And he'll say that not all of us have the opportunity to know when at the exact moment when our lives changed. His line is that today is the day that your life is going to change if you allow us and our victim service providers to help you. And it's quite telling when you see somebody realize that, you know what, today is the day I'm going to change my life, and they kind of turn everything over to us, and they give us their whole story, and they give us the sense of trust to help them. And oftentimes all of this occurs within a 10-minute period.
It's important to use appropriate language to win their trust and keep the lines of communication open.
That first contact is how that person is going to be influenced on how they fall through the system, whether they want to be helped.
You put them at ease, and you let them know you're there to help and not to put her in custody. You're there to help her.
One of the things maybe to think about is to take off the police officer hat for a moment and just put on the father hat or the uncle hat or the mother hat, so that you can approach somebody who may be a victim of pimping or pandering or human trafficking or some form of exploitation. You can approach them with that empathy that a family member would have.
Throughout my experience of investigating human trafficking crimes, we've found that victims are very reluctant to refer to themselves as prostitutes or to refer to their pimps or traffickers as pimps. Having learned that, we've taken it upon ourselves to remove those words from our interviews, and just if our victim is referring to her trafficker as a boyfriend, we'll conduct the interview as such. How long have you been with your boyfriend? Because oftentimes they're reluctant to refer to someone as a pimp or a human trafficker because they know of the legal consequences that come with that. What has worked for our department is to actually open up the penal code and read the definition of human trafficking, or read the definition of pimping or pandering to our victim, and then ask them, does that definition fit or match the criteria that you're currently involved in with your boyfriend or girlfriend? And oftentimes when they hear the legal definition and we play back their own story to them, they're more apt to admit that, yes, in fact, they have been a victim of human trafficking.
We've talked a lot about the idea of a victim-centered approach, and I know that is a departure, it's a change in the way that we've done business in law enforcement in the field of pimping and pandering and human trafficking. We've had multiple victims talk to us about how the victim-centered approach, the different approach that law enforcement has had to them, has changed their mindset.
It's important to provide for victim safety. Consider their immediate needs for stability, medical attention, and crisis intervention. A supported victim usually makes an effective witness.
The sexual exploitation of children is a form of child abuse. Therefore, as mandated reporters, this is something we have to report on. I think often we think of child abuse as being something that only happens by a parent or a guardian. Under California law, sexual abuse also includes sexual exploitation and child prostitution.
And remember, peace officers are mandatory reporters of child abuse. Coming up in our next training segment, we will focus on the preliminary investigation and how Proposition 35 has changed the penal code. In this segment, we will focus on the preliminary investigation and how Proposition 35 has changed the law, not only for helping victims, but for prosecuting the exploiters and purchasers as well.
You got my money for the night?
Yeah, Daddy, we did good tonight. That's how much we got.
Oh, shit. Cops. Yeah. Remember what I told you.
Remember your name and remember your age just like I told you. And know that I can hear everything you say.
Don't mess this up. I'm gonna beat both of y'all.
Yes, Daddy.
Hey, good evening.
Hey, officer, how are you?
Pretty good. You know you're parked in the fire lane?
Oh, no, I didn't even know that.
You have ID, registration, proof of insurance for your vehicle?
Yeah, let me get it first. One sec.
Marijuana smelling in your car?
Oh, no, man, it's just the air freshener.
You got me to everybody get out of the car for me, please.
Yeah. What's the problem, man?
Go ahead and step right here for me real quick. Any weapons on you?
Nah.
Guns, knives, hand grenades? Keep your hands out of your pocket for me real quick. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna pat you down, make sure you ain't got any weapons. Why don't you go turn around for me real quick? Put your hands together, palms together. Yeah. There you go. Widen your stance for me, please. Sure.
Okay, I just want to talk to you for a few minutes. What's your name and your age?
My name is Natalia Smith, and I'm 25 years old.
There is no way that you are 25 years old.
I am 25.
Natalia, tell me, how old are you?
18, but that's my real name.
Okay. Where are you from?
Arizona.
Arizona? Okay. Now, are you working or do you go to school?
I don't do either.
What's your date of birth?
Now, being from North Carolina, what brings you to this part of town?
Oh, right now we're just hanging out pretty much. That's all we're doing. Nothing really do.
Okay, you didn't realize what time it is?
No, you know what? I don't even have my phone on me. Sorry.
Okay, 3 o'clock parked in the fire lane.
Yeah, sorry about that.
A little odd, right?
I mean, I can move my car down the street.
Okay. Oh, that's fine. Have you ever been arrested before?
I had a conviction probably like a year ago.
Okay. You're on parole or probation?
Probation.
What are you on probation for?
Just domestic violence.
Domestic violence?
Yeah.
When's the last time you were arrested?
What, about a year and a half ago.
Okay. So what were your friends' names again?
Oh, Andrea and Natalia. Yeah.
Okay. And how old are your friends?
Oh, well, one's 23 and the other one's 20.
Which one? 21?
Yeah, she's 21, yeah.
And how long have you known them?
A couple months now, yeah.
Can I get an ID check on a Natalia Smith, 228 of 95 from Arizona? Do you have a cell phone on you? May I look through it?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Mike, I got some text messages here, and there's a My Redbook account. I'm going to call the number on the text.
Hey, I thought you said you didn't have a cell phone on you. Why don't you go ahead and turn around for me real quick? Put your hands behind your back. Palms together. And on in there.
Hey, Mike, she's a runaway juvenile from Arizona, but I think we have something more than just a runaway. I found condoms in the vehicle, and with the text messages, I think we got a case of human trafficking. Let's call in the advocate. I'm gonna collect all that evidence, and I think we need to figure out how this other female's involved.
You're right. I'll call the sergeant and let him know what we have.
What's gonna happen to me?
You're gonna be okay. We're gonna get you some help.
What's gonna happen to me?
You're gonna be okay. We're gonna get you some help.
All right, what did you see there?
Well, their stories weren't corroborating.
The ad that he found on the phone, the Red Book ad, and he starts flipping through it, and you can see all the ads in there, and then the text messages.
All right, how important are cell phones in these kinds of situations?
Very.
Yeah, these days phones are people's lives. Everything's on them. Okay, so when you're dealing with cell phones and you've got information you can take off of them, make sure you know the laws, because those laws are always changing, and then make sure you know our agency policy on that as well, because that's going to make or break whether or not you can use that evidence in court. What's one of the best ways that you can preserve the phone information if you can take the phone from either your suspect or your victim to keep that information intact?
Hey, you can celebrate it.
Pardon me?
You can celebrate it.
Yeah, you can celebrate it. That's a resource. What else until that happens?
You can take photographs of what you see.
You can take photographs of what you see. What's one other thing that you can do?
If you're good enough with cell phones, you can put it on airplane mode.
Yes.
So you can make sure the radio signal and Wi-Fi signal doesn't connect to the phone and alter any data or evidence.
Right, it won't alter anything. So those are all good first actions to take when you first come on something like this. What about the car? What did you see in the car specifically that were indicators?
Condoms.
Condoms. What else was in there?
So like they were
marijuana.
Right, right. So now, what are your potential charges as you're going through? You're interviewing, obviously, the underage girl. You've got that she's, from another state. Start thinking about what kinds of charges that, you can start arresting this guy for. What are some of the options there?
One thing that's nice, he's on probation, so you have the car and you can search the car and find whatever else is inside there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what about him? You've got him on probation violation. What else?
He's with a minor.
He's with a minor.
And also when the officer did well calling the phone number that he found on the ad, after he had just lied to the other officer saying that he didn't have a phone. Right. So right there you're able to link him up to the prostitution activity. He has the phone linked up to I guess it was my Red Book ad. So right there, at least pimping.
Right, and you also saw the text messages on there. So yes, you maybe start thinking about charging him with pimping. Think about your juvenile victim here, though, and she's from out of state. What other possibility might you have here?
Kidnapping.
Okay. And if he's holding her against her will?
False imprisonment.
Exactly. You just keep piling him on. Keep piling on the charges. Now, what did the officers do as far as the victim now to actually pull that information out of her? Again, what did he do?
Told her he was there to help her.
Right.
Instead of there to arrest her, he was there to help her.
Okay. One of the things that I want you to notice too in a lot of these interviews is these officers are not condescending to these girls. They don't have an antagonistic attitude towards them. And that's really important because, again, that goes back to their first impression of you, what they may tell other girls who may try to get out or who may have been, in the same situation as they are. So keep that in mind. Your contact with them is going to make or break whatever opportunities are available for them and how they're going to interact with you. Okay? One thing about when you're interviewing people, what's the best way to pull information out of them?
Have some questions about who he was with. And then they just talked among themselves and see if the details, if they corroborated, if they made sense. So
he just let the guy talk, right? And sometimes that's all you have to do. Throw a question out there and just let them go. Let them talk. Let them dig their little hole. And then when you compare the stories, what do you have? You've got articulable suspicion that they're involved in something, illegal, especially now that you've got a minor in the situation. What about the second girl?
Likely a victim too. If you have one victim there, you probably have the other victim.
She might be. What was her attitude though? Was it indicative of somebody that's a victim?
But she probably is, what we refer as the bottom bitch, just away from the beginning of the scenario where, she's instructing the girl in the back, what to say. And it seems like, that's probably the pimp's number one girl. Okay. She's probably recruiting her, training her what to say and what to do.
Okay. Would you consider her a victim at this point?
I would.
Possibly.
Depends on cooperation.
It's possible. Yeah, and even without cooperation, she may still be a victim because, again, she may have been lured into the situation. She may be to the point now where she's been in it so long she doesn't think she has any more options. Okay? But she may be a victim as well.
She could be a suspect as well.
She could also be a suspect.
And I think in order to prove her a victim, there's going to be a lot of legwork that's going to need to be done on the back end, probably long after patrol gets done with it. So, I think if anything, at the scene, we're going to be able to prove that she's a suspect. Okay. But like you said, it's probably more on her cooperation than anything.
Right. And is that is something that you can do at the patrol level, though?
Sure.
So, what happens now after this point? Now that you've got two stories, now what do you do?
You can either
because she's been standing there at the end of the car this whole time.
You can separate the girls and get their stories separately.
Right.
And see how they kind of start lying.
Yeah. So you need more resources. First of all, you've got 3 people and 2 of you. You're going to need more resources as well. So call in some backup. Call in a couple more officers. Pull them in 3 different directions, and then get her story too. Because even though she's threatening your juvenile victim, she may be a victim as well. And if she's not, then you have to start thinking about what charges you want to file against her as well. So you may have 2 suspects and 1 victim. All right. Stay safe. Be alert out there, and have a great shift, you guys.
Thanks, Sarge.
Thank you.
The old school was 647B and 653. What we had before was simple solicitation for prostitution and loitering for the purposes of prostitution. Proposition 35 changed Penal Code Section 236.1, human trafficking, and divided it into 3 parts. Now we have 236.1A, which is labor trafficking, 236.1B, which is the sex trafficking of adults, and 236.1C, which is the sex trafficking of minors. In addition, 236.1C was divided into 2 parts, the trafficking of minors with coercion and the trafficking of minors without coercion. Each of these, 236.1A, B, and C, increased punishment dramatically for offenders. The punishment of an offender who has trafficked a minor with force can be up to 15 years to life, the same as it were for second-degree murder.
If you have an investigation that leads you to a pimp, it's crucial to understand that that pimp is liable for felony pimping whether or not the victim consented to engage in acts of prostitution. Consent is not a defense to pimping or pandering. When we're talking about human trafficking, or we're talking about signs that the victim is a minor and she's engaged in prostitution activity at the behest of a pimp, that's a human trafficking offense. And it doesn't matter whether or not the pimp knows how old the victim is. Mistake of fact is not a defense. If he thinks that she's 21 because she said so, but in reality she's 17, we still have a human trafficking charge that we can file. And it's also important to understand when we're dealing with minor victims of human trafficking, consent, again, is not a defense. She cannot consent to engage in acts of prostitution. So even if she says she was doing it willingly, or she wanted to do it, or she even asked him if he could help her out, he's guilty for human trafficking, and we should hold him accountable for that.
The collection of evidence is extremely important because that's going to be the first time that you're going to be, and maybe only time you're going to be able to collect something.
Memorializing the scene as you find it is crucial. And that means being able to take photographs, being able to articulate where everybody was seated in the car, being able to locate things such as condoms, payo sheets, cell phones, thumb drives, computers, laptops. Make sure you do what you can to lawfully access the phone so you can see what kind of text messages might be inside the phone.
Who are they talking to? What kind of things are being said? What are their contact names?
Sometimes you're lucky enough you come across the phone and it's unlocked. It can be a little bit tricky trying to make sure it stays unlocked. Oftentimes if you turn the phone off and power it back on again, all of a sudden you've locked the phone and now we're stuck. Another thing to remember with these phones is they can be remotely wiped. So one of the things we tell our officers to do is put the phones into airplane mode.
If you have an indication that your victim, particularly a juvenile victim, was having intercourse with the trafficker, make sure that you try to get her to agree to go ahead and do a SART exam. Forensic evidence is unbeatable. Oftentimes, the only person that's allowed to have intercourse with a victim of human trafficking is going to be her pimp. She's going to be required to wear condoms with every one of her tricks or her dates. And so the only one that's going to sleep with her without a condom is going to be the pimp.
It's very important to look at the pimps, the traffickers' social networking accounts. Once you start looking at those, you'll see he's not just communicating with your victim, he's communicating with half a dozen other victims.
Oftentimes your investigation is going to lead you to motels or hotels that the victim has stayed in. Make sure that you have somebody follow up with the motels, find out who registered for the rooms, and again, if there was any indication of sexual activity that happened, talk to your DA and decide whether or not it's advantageous to get a search warrant for the rooms and possibly collect up the bedding or the linen.
One of the things we've noted over the years is the prevalence of gang members involved in pimping, but that the street names that they're using as a pimp are oftentimes different than the street names they were using as a gang member. And the victims, the girls that are involved with these pimps, they may only know him by his pimp name and may not realize that he has a second or other street name as a gang member.
Remember, if possible, always record audio or video of the victim's statements. Human trafficking laws are not exclusive. A suspect can be held accountable for more than human trafficking. It's important to look for any associated crimes.
If there's an indication of movement against the victim's will, you want to look at whether or not there was some kidnapping, associated sex crimes or child molestation crimes. Assault or threats are very important to note because human trafficking is not a strike offense, but criminal threats, as we all know, are strike offenses.
One of the best federal violations that we can use in human trafficking cases is production of child pornography. A lot of times these exploiters will take photos of these victims that could constitute child pornography.
It's also important to talk to your victims about whether or not she suffered any injuries. If she has, make sure you take photographs of the scars.
For instance, they may have to also do credit card fraud or robberies in order to make some extra money.
If we enforce human trafficking, other crimes are going to go down as well. And we've seen that.
Local law enforcement officers should contact their federal partners in these investigations, as most of these investigations wind up having multi-jurisdictional issues.
As a federal agent, there are many things that I can do to help local law enforcement. The FBI runs innocence lost task forces and working groups throughout the country.
Oftentimes, local departments don't have a clear understanding of what may make a federal case and the laws that apply to this situation. Under 18 U.S.C. 1591, the sex trafficking laws of the United States, all it takes is any item that affects interstate commerce to make it a federal jurisdiction. So if John uses a condom during the commission of the Commercial Sex Act, then that makes it a federal jurisdiction.
Trafficking Victim Protection Act's law made human trafficking a federal crime. It also provided very strong tools to investigators and prosecutors.
Coming up in our next segment, we will explore resources that will help with investigations and victim support. Coming up in this segment, we will focus on resources for peace officers. With the passage of Proposition 35, the people of California have indicated they want law enforcement to take reasonable steps to identify victims and provide resources. For law enforcement, this is the new norm.
Help! 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 Help!
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Hit me!
Who?
I'm hurt.
Who hurt you? Who hurt you?
They hurt me here.
Where are you from? Where are you from?
Taiwan.
Taiwan. Okay.
I bring here.
Okay. Relax for a second. Okay. Okay. Can you point out the apartment for me?
They there.
Okay. Well, let's go. You can point it out to me. Okay.
River City Police. Hi, ma'am. How you doing?
Hi, officer.
We're here because this young lady out here said that she was assaulted in your apartment. Can we come in and talk to you about that?
Sure.
All right. Is there anyone else here?
Yes, just.
Just one. Okay. Is it okay if I take a look around?
Sure, no problem.
All right. You good, partner?
Yeah.
Hey.
Relax.
Jeez.
Relax. What's your name?
May.
May? Mm-hmm. Can you explain to me how she got her injuries? She got smacked in the face?
I don't know.
You have no idea?
No.
No? Did she get into a fight in here or some kind of...
No fight.
No fight?
I don't know.
Okay. Huh. Does she live here too?
Yes, she live here with me.
Okay. And where are you from?
I'm from Taiwan.
You're from Taiwan?
Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you lived here?
Long time, many years.
Long time? And your name's on the lease on the apartment?
Yes.
Okay. So, ma'am, what's your name?
Yes, hello.
Do you understand English?
Yes, hello. She knows speak English. Maybe I can translate.
No, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and call our translation line to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, no problem.
Do you have identification? ID?
I have her ID. I can go get for you.
You have her ID?
Yes.
Why do you have her ID?
Just to keep safe.
To keep safe?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have all the girls' IDs?
Yes. I keep all their IDs.
Why are you holding all the girls' IDs?
So they don't lose it.
So they don't lose it?
All right. So the rest of the house check's clear, and there's no one else back there.
Okay. Good. Ma'am, you want to come in, please?
And this other lady went to get IDs for everybody?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello? Hi. I just wondered what's going on here with the police.
Who are you?
I'm the apartment manager. I just wondered why the police are here.
Perfect. Can I talk to you outside for a minute?
Yeah.
All right. So what can you tell me about this apartment?
Yeah, the renter signed the lease like several months ago. Okay. And I never see him at the apartment. I just see him like once a month when he pays the rent. But I do see a lot of guys coming in and out all hours of the night and day, like from 11 in the morning to 11 at night.
Okay. Does he pay cash?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you'd obviously be able to recognize him.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and just for you said several months ago?
Yes.
All right. Well, we're investigating an assault, so if we have any other questions, then I will come and find you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right, so that was the apartment manager, and he said that he rented this apartment several months ago to a male, and he pays cash, and he only sees him once a month when he pays cash. Other than that, he hasn't seen him here. He said that there are males that come in all hours of the day and night, different males, not the one that actually rented the apartment. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, very.
Hey, hello. Hey, I'm the guy that just called.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
What's your name?
My name is Robert.
You sure about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Robert, what brings you here today? Do you live here?
Oh, no. I'm just here for a massage. That's all. I just came for a massage.
Massage. How'd you find out about this place?
This place? I found out about this place on the internet. I'm just here for a massage. Can I go now?
No, you know what? Why don't you just hang for a sec? We're gonna, sort through this.
I have a
figure out what's going on here.
dental appointment I got to get to.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to reschedule that. Okay.
Oh.
Because it's probably gonna be a little bit.
Kind of hard to get in, but okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I just got off the phone with the translator. So the female that couldn't speak English, she actually relayed that she's being kept here against her will.
Really?
Yeah, so I think we have a little bit more than a simple assault.
Okay.
So I think we need to get the supervisor notified, and maybe we can find some victim assistance for them.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll start making those phone calls.
All right, I'll hang out with them while you do that.
Okay. All right. Very good.
All right, I'll hang out with them while you do that.
Okay. All right. Very good.
So what was your first impression of the situation? What was it about the victim? What were some of the things that triggered this is more than maybe just an assault for you?
Already a language barrier, and just, she looked scared, and that she's running out, flagging down the police, and just knowing that she's not from this area.
Okay. So she had injuries, she was afraid.
One of the very first things she said is she was brought here from Taiwan.
Okay.
I think that was the first indicator for me, is this is probably a little bit more than just a simple battery.
Okay.
Or a domestic violence situation.
What about her, the way she looked, the way she appeared to you? What did that tell you?
Yeah, she was like, what is it, like in the lingerie? Yeah.
Shorts, yeah. So possibly not appropriate dress, maybe, for the time of year. So look at your circumstances again, right? What do you have? What do you need to know at this point? You've got someone running out screaming that she's been assaulted, that she's here from Taiwan, speaks very little English, and now you go to the apartment and you've got, an apartment full of, 2-3 other women. What about that first contact when you walk to that door?
Well, that the woman who answered the door was very nice and very cooperative, but she spoke English very well. Okay. Was very well spoken. And then immediately you see the other female sitting there who, every time you ask her a question, she looks towards the main woman who answered the door, kind of like, what do I say? I don't know how to answer these questions.
So at this point, what do you need to establish about these 3 people? Right, you need to know what the relationships are. So how do you know who's in charge of the situation? Who's the controller here?
Pretty obvious, the female that answered the door. She, like I said, she could speak English, the other 2 did not. And she held the IDs. She seemed to be very much in control of the other 2. She was giving dirty looks to the assault victim, saying things to her.
Right, she yelled at her at one point. Right? Yeah, so she does appear to be in control. What about when he asked for IDs?
Mm-hmm. She said she had them.
She said she had them, right?
And right there, that lets you know, why is she holding on to the IDs? Are these girls being held against her will?
Exactly.
And how were they brought over to the country?
Right. What else about the apartment itself? What did you see?
Hey, Sarge, the windows were blacked out, and I think there was a payout sheet and some cash in the apartment. Not a lot of furniture, blankets on the ground. I think they had an arrow bed in the middle of one room. Okay. And they had a cupboard that had bottled waters and Costco-sized pack of condoms.
Right, so you may have, the female, what might her role be in this whole thing?
She probably just runs the day-to-day operation.
Right, so she may be managing the girls in that particular operation, but you've got someone else who's paying the rent, so he may be your trafficker, your behind-the-scenes trafficker. What else does that indicate to you? He doesn't live there, he comes in to pay the rent, pays it in cash once a month.
He probably has 3 or 4 other places that he's running, bringing girls in and running girls through.
Exactly. There may be other locations, there may be obviously other than these 2 victims. So what do you do at this point with your victims? How do you get to them? Especially you've got one that doesn't speak English, you've got one that speaks very little English, she's afraid, she's scared, you've got an obvious controller at that point who has already been hostile towards her. How do you get these victims to a point where now they can feel safe and they can maybe start talking to you?
You need a trustworthy translator.
That's
somebody you can actually communicate with them.
Exactly.
You get the real story.
Right.
Yeah, I think we're going to be critical of the officers in this particular instance. They left everybody in the same room.
Okay.
It was the two potential victims plus the manager, if you will, or the mama-san. They kept them all in the same room instead of taking them outside of that location. I think it would have been good to get them downstairs, away from her, so they can give their own statements and, like you mentioned, get a translator there that they can actually talk to and relate to. It's great that we have these translation lines, but I think a face-to-face interview in this situation would be much more beneficial than a translator over the telephone.
All right. So at this point, what do you need to do?
I think another valuable thing is because that lady was holding on to their IDs and documents, just giving that back to them, at least to let them know that now they're in control, that they can, that they're free from this situation. And of course, calling the resources that are available for them. I mean, it's obvious they're being trafficked from their country, and just providing them the advocates and the resources that are available to them.
Right. So here it's very, very critical that you know what your options are. What else do we need to think about for them?
Well, we need to think about what lured them here into the country. I mean, is it something that their family back home? Were they sending money back home?
Okay. And you mentioned their family back home. What else about their families back home?
Maybe they're being held against their will somewhere else.
Right. Maybe the threat is against their family, so that's also something to consider. So when you get those translators in, maybe get the story, maybe find out where their family is too. Okay? Because obviously they were not born in this country. Every situation is different. It appears to be one thing, and 9 times out of 10 it's something else. So make sure you stay safe out there when you have these encounters, right? And just be alert to what the situation may really be. All right? Have a great shift.
Thanks, Sarge. Thank you.
The quicker you connect the victim to resources, the higher their chances are of cooperation across the board, not just with law enforcement and prosecution, but even with the services themselves.
So it's important that law enforcement be the first contact and build that rapport so that as community members, we can come in after you and give them that service that they need.
Knowing the services in your area is critical. However, it can be across the state, it can be a little bit daunting. One of the best places to start is usually your local domestic violence shelter, because while they may not specifically deal with victims of trafficking, they usually have the connections to go in the right way.
Most oftentimes, your victims are going to need basic things. They're going to need clothing, they're going to need food and water, they're going to need shelter, and then you're going to get into medical needs. Sometimes I see officers and they forget about medical concerns. Whenever we come in contact with a victim of rape, we're really good about offering a sexual assault exam. So we should think about these cases in the same way.
Emergency protective orders can be a very good tool. They're often used in domestic violence cases, and they're most often ignored in sex trafficking cases.
While working with all these human trafficking victims, whether they're domestic or international, we really have to understand one thing. We are all coming from different backgrounds. It's very, very important to take into consideration the culture of other people that we are working with.
And it's so important for law enforcement to become partners with their federal counterparts, law enforcement agencies from the counties that their victims and suspects originate from. And it's also incredibly crucial for law enforcement to partner with their local district attorney's office. Make sure that they work with the DAs so that they understand what kinds of evidence the DAs need to effectively prove a case to a jury. The DA can help them fine-tune their warrants to make sure that they find all the proper avenues for evidence, whether they be on cell phones, on internet advertisements, search of homes, cars, motel rooms. All of that is crucial to developing a case.
The Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force is one of 9 human trafficking task forces throughout the state. The task force are based geographically, where anyone, regardless of what portion of the state they are located in, has a task force that they can reach out to. And if you are in a remote area and you don't know which task force your area is covered by, you can reach out to the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-3737-888.
Some of the advantages of taking a case federal include being able to wrap a lot of different jurisdictions into one bigger case.
As a probation department, I think we lend a lot of resource to law enforcement. A lot of the adult probationers that our young girls have identified as their trafficker have actually been on adult probation.
The VCB, the Victims of Crime Board, provides funding for victims who have been victims of human trafficking.
We also have unaccompanied refugee minor program, it's called URM, and trafficking victims who are minors under the age of 18 can be placed in that system.
Another resource is Continued Presence. This helps keep foreign victims in this country so they can testify.
Continued presence allows the victim to stay in the United States during the pendency of the investigation and testify at trial for that investigation. Other remedies include U visas and T visas, which are applied for by the victims by their attorneys.
Law enforcement plays a role in the application process for T visas and U visas. They are frequently asked to file what is commonly referred to as a law enforcement certification. Law enforcement is frequently concerned that if they sign the law enforcement certification, they are granting a visa, and that is actually a misunderstanding. By signing the Supplement B for either a U or a T visa, they are merely attesting to certain facts.
There are also many non-government resources, or NGOs, that can provide for both the immediate and long-term needs of victims.
That we can't do this alone as law enforcement. We have to partner with non-government organizations. We have to look for the resources that are available.
So MISSY, which stands for Motivating, Inspiring, Supporting, and Serving Sexually Exploited Youth, does two things. One, we provide direct services to victims. We see an average of 90 victims a month, and there's a lot of success. The second really arm of what we do is training and education. And so I want law enforcement to know that you might do one part, and you may think, I do this, but I don't see any of these girls get out. But on the other end, when you send them to organizations like MISSY, and we do the long-term work for the next couple of years, we see a lot of success, a lot of success.
With CASRI, we recruit foster families as a method of prevention as well as aftercare. But once a lot of these victims are rescued, they're minors. The group homes are filled, and so what they really need is families, and that's what they really want. And so that's one of our focuses at CASRI is to provide families.
One really important partner in human trafficking cases is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They're an NGO based in Washington, D.C.
National Human Trafficking Hotline is available not only for people that want to report suspected victims of human trafficking, it's also a resource that local law enforcement officers can use to find resources or to ask questions and locate local victim service providers in their county or their city.
My Sister's House is a domestic violence agency based in Sacramento. Our focus is on the Asian and Pacific Islander communities, but we help anyone regardless of their ethnicity or nationality.
So Bridget Stream is an organization that's survivor-led and survivor-inspired. And so now what we do is we provide prevention workshops for youth at risk, and we provide intervention services, so that's crisis care and direct outreach to victims on the streets, and then restoration services, so that's case management and ongoing support as they walk their recovery journey.
To the law enforcement that's out there and who care, we really appreciate everything that you are doing. We can't do it alone, and it's the things that you are doing to make the victims feel safe and secure. We really appreciate all the hard work that you're doing to end human trafficking.
We have come to the end of our training. I'm Mark Bailey, and on behalf of the Commission on Peace Officers Standards and Training, we would like to thank you for your participation. Now, I would like to encourage you to take a moment and listen to the final thoughts from our subject matter experts. They all participated in this training because they are passionate about the cause of human trafficking, and they would like California law enforcement to help fight this form of modern-day slavery. This course is designed to be facilitated in a group setting. Before conducting a group training session, you should review and become familiar with the material in this program. Open and print the facilitator guide and go through the program yourself before putting the course on for others. As the facilitator, your job is to engage your students in constructive, free-flowing discussion on the key learning points of this training topic. Use the tools provided in this program to stimulate critical thinking and situational awareness in the group by viewing the scenarios, expert interviews, and discussion videos. Questions and activities are provided to promote group interaction and discussion on the training topic. Customize the learning experience by applying your agency policy and procedures to the training concepts. Segments in this program accommodate shorter training periods, such as during roll call training sessions. Track your students' progress through the entire program. As the facilitator, you need to know that your students have gone through the material and sufficiently mastered the learning objectives. Once the students have successfully completed the program, submit your training roster to POST for CPT credit. Following this plan will help to create an environment for the debate of ideas, sharing of wisdom based on experience, and encourage a greater understanding of local policies and procedures. We wish you and your agency all the best in successfully implementing this program. This course is designed to be facilitated in a group setting. However, when that is not possible, here are some instructions for getting the most out of this training program so that you may receive continuing professional training or CPT credit. Obtain permission from your agency trainer or supervisor to view the course for training credit, and let them know you will be viewing the program. This will give them some time to review the course themselves and be prepared to discuss it with you later on. Open and print the student study guide so that you can take notes and fill out responses to the questions and activities. Think about how the training concepts presented apply to your agency policy and procedures. You may view the scenarios, expert interviews, and discussion videos several times to assist you in providing responses. Keep track of your progress as you complete the segments in this course. When you have finished the entire program, inform the trainer that you would like to review the course with them. Send them your completed student study guide prior to meetings so that they have had a chance to review your responses. Scheduling a face-to-face meeting with your trainer is the best way to review your work on the course. If this is not possible, arrange a phone call meeting. But in either case, allow time to review and discuss your responses. Your supervisor or trainer may require additional work or feedback from you before giving CPT credit. They may want to evaluate your understanding of how the training points relate to your agency policy, for instance. It is their discretion in determining whether you have adequately completed the course. Following these instructions will give you the best opportunity not only to receive CPT credit, but to grasp the training concepts, benefit from the experience of others, and apply the training and experience to your local policy and procedures. We wish you and your agency all the best in successfully completing this course.
You need to have the passion to go out and do the thing that you signed up to do. And it's not all about chasing crooks and foot chases and taking dope off the street and solving homicides. We're talking about human beings here. Human beings that are sold and bought as property, as slaves. This is a modern era, and we still have modern day slavery.
I would just encourage law enforcement officers and their agencies to really take this seriously and to develop a protocol so that when the history books are written about this particular issue, that we're all on the right side of history.
You have to look beyond the surface. You have to do a little bit of digging. These aren't easy cases. They don't really look like human trafficking, but there's a lot of terrible, terrible things that are happening to these victims, and unless you actually do that little bit of digging, you're never going to see it. This is a huge opportunity for patrol officers to make a huge impact on their community, not only getting rid of a prostitution problem, but also other crime problems in the area as well, and perhaps even saving lives.
But the biggest thing I want to get across is to please get out of the vehicle, ask the questions, and help these victims.
Because we're going to make a difference because we have contact with them. It's either going to be a negative or it's going to be a positive. And I think we can, again, no longer afford to just walk by and act as if it's not our issue. It's all of our issues.
The person who's going to see this child most likely out there on the street is the patrol officer. And the person who's going to have the chance to make that first positive impression is that patrol officer. And if that positive impression is not made, that victim will never make it to the investigator. There are a lot of victims that law enforcement responds to and a lot of trainings that law enforcement get. But I just want to say that victims of human trafficking, specifically children who are victims, they represent the most vulnerable and the most desperate individuals in our society, and that's why they're preyed on.
Allow the mindset to be changed, and you'll see yourself rescuing victims, and you'll see more traffickers put behind bars. And I'm sure that would make being a law enforcement officer even more rewarding.
Socially, we need to stand up and tell the criminal organizations that are engaged in this act that we won't tolerate their continued abuse of these vulnerable people. And we need to attack, as law enforcement, the economic stream by which these criminal organizations are making their money.
We have to begin addressing the purchasers of sex trafficking as more than just Johns, as more than just witnesses to the crime of prostitution. We need to start addressing them as sex purchasers, oftentimes as child abusers.
That law enforcement is the first person to bring hope to these victims.
You know, remember when you put on that uniform, you have the opportunity to change all that. You have an opportunity to change their story and to change the trajectory of their lives. And you have an opportunity to make sure that we prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, really the most evil among us. And those are the people that are going to sell men, women, and children for their own personal profit.